on Friday, December 22nd. Just a couple more sleeps till Christmas, right? Isn't that what we say?
That's what you
Here
tell
to
the
me,
kids.
yeah, that's what we say. So that's happy holidays to everybody, and welcome to the Dev Talk Show. Here with my co-host Rich Ross, and somewhere behind me is my dog Scooter, who may only kind of be on camera. Maybe that's him right there. Not sure.
It was a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
He'll probably react to something outside and bark or something at some point in the show. So thanks everybody for joining us. We're looking for something to do for a pre-Christmas show. We've spent a lot of time talking about Blazor. Spent a lot of time talking about identity, especially, and how do you get that set up, which I think has been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And but today we were going to try to do something different. And a lot of folks, I think, who watch our channel know the C# Fritz channel, which is Jeff Fritz, works for Microsoft. Big contributor there with the ASP.NET team, the .NET teams. We see him at .NET Conf, basically making that thing an incredible success. Like it's an amazing show to watch. Developer to developer, really developer focused show, right? And he has an open source project called TagzApp, which we thought, wouldn't. You said, I think there's a GitHub issue we're going to look at specifically.
Yeah.
And
which
so
I can bring up here.
Yeah. We're going to look at a GitHub issue specifically. It's something that we've talked about a lot on the show. So we thought well, would we be able to help? and we're going to find out. So, it's just to set the expectation for people, whether you're watching live or watching on replay. I know a lot of times we're trying to do that. So, since it's an hour show, and this isn't oftentimes on YouTube, 8 straight minutes, it's going to be exactly what you're looking for. Set a good expectation that we're going to do our best to try and build and run TagzApp today, and then see if we can get on the path to contributing what this issue is talking about. So hope everybody enjoys it. And I guess, there goes my dog right in the background now. So I guess I'll switch over to screen share mode once you get
once I share
to present. Yeah. So I love how we have our multi-step process here,
and this gives you a chance to be a couple steps ahead.
But thanks everybody for joining us today. Hopefully everybody is getting ready for a great holiday. Oh, and look at that, of course. So I'll go ahead and let you start taking a look at what we're looking at here.
Yeah. So you can see my screen okay? Is it big enough? Of course, I say that right as Chris pulls the earplugs out. Let's see. Myself a little bit of room here on the confidence monitor. Is that large enough? Does that look good?
It's kind of small, I think.
Really?
Of course, then okay. I really hit Control++ a lot, so that's me.
All right.
But yeah, there we go. Okay. Fritz and Friends is the repo. Yeah.
Yep. So we're and actually I am not signed in. Let's see. Sorry. I'll pull this aside. 1 second. So the reason signing in is probably going to want to 2-factor me as well, right? Yep. Sorry. Highly recommend doing this. Just it's always those extra steps when we're doing it from the stream.
While you're doing that, remember I already forgot. There was one thing I wanted to mention that I should have mentioned earlier. Let me screenshot something and then bring it up. So okay. I think a lot of people know I'm not like some experienced YouTuber, but we got a comment yesterday.
Okay.
And I just wanted to share. I'm really grateful for it. Like, it just really makes me feel like this for me is what it's all about in a lot of ways. So here's the comment. It just says, and this little symbol means that this user, Ahmad, publicly shares that they're subscribed to the channel. Now, I'm not 100% sure how you set that setting, but it must be that he allows everyone to see who he subscribes to, or he or she.
Okay.
And it just said, "Thanks a lot for the video. Hi from Tashkent." And I mean, that's cool in itself.
Now, what is Tashkent?
Being an American,
yeah,
I recognize that my geography failed me, and then I even felt bad when I felt like I should know. I feel like this is something I should know. So I hit up a search engine and found it's the capital of Uzbekistan. And
that's awesome.
I just thought, how cool is that? That YouTube gives us the ability to make a video that someone around the world gets to appreciate. And that I love that. That was cool.
Yeah, that is, you don't realize. Yeah, we do this show for us, right? It's a chance for you and I to get together and talk. It started from being in the parking lot, and you suddenly realize that you're impacting people, halfway around the world, which is awesome.
Yeah, that was cool. So, and that wasn't a planned diversion. And in fact, I remember saying, I really want to talk about this comment, and then I forgot about it. So in this case, but hopefully it allowed you to get logged into GitHub, which I know it's always fun when GitHub says like, let's get your password and your 2FA going. So, which is mandatory now if you contribute code, I believe.
Really? I've had it set up forever. So
I have too, but I started getting emails because one of the things I do every year for that We Connect the Dots Codeathon is I make a new account so that I can demonstrate to the students how to make a new account.
Okay.
And then I got an email that said like, if you contribute code, you have to use 2FA. And I said, oh, that's an interesting GitHub policy that I guess is being rolled out. I may not have it 100% correct, but it was an email that I got. So
neat.
Anyways.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. We're at 8:00. Okay. So we had Jeff presenting to Philo.net a week or so ago, maybe a little more than that now. And one of the things he talked a little bit about was TagzApp and community contributions and all of that, and all of those things. And there are a number of issues in here. There are 69 open issues. And I know and we probably should talk about what TagzApp is, because I don't know that I have let's go back to the beginning. For those who don't know, and on Jeff's show, this is some screenshots of the application. And what it does is it allows for, you might have seen it during .NET Conf, where Jeff had whoever was presenting from there had the big wall behind them. And it was basically anytime somebody did a tweet or what does Mastodon call them? A toot?
Yeah, I actually don't know, but I know what you mean, like a post on Mastodon.
Exactly. And or Twitch or YouTube, and then having a way to basically pull all of those together. It's kind of similar to what you were doing in that container app that we built a long time ago, where we were pulling what we posted in Twitch and having that, essentially that information get pulled somewhere, using services like that to basically have them all be congregated into the one view. And then you can do some cool stuff like, hey, I want to look at this particular post and talk about it or bring it to everybody's attention. So really cool stuff when it comes to being live for an event. I was actually thinking, as I was seeing this, that'd be pretty fun to have up on a board sometime when we do if we do Code Camp again, right? To be able to say, hey, here's all the comments from everybody who's here at Code Camp. So
yeah, right.
So it's a really awesome application. And Jeff, taking what they did on stream and built it all out on stream, he's continuing to modify it and continue to enhance it, because it's a tool that, as Jeff does these kind of online events, it's a really awesome tool for them to have as part of the production. So because of that, and because of feedback from that particular use case, a lot of these events or a lot of these issues we're essentially logged, right? So people making comments or people, Jeff doing some feedback from his stream, and I'm going to go through. So basically, he's got these listed by milestones, and I know their upcoming milestone is milestone 4. So we can go ahead and take a look at that one. And I was going through this because this is the one that they're currently actively working on. With today is a due date, but we put dates on those kind of things to just kind of move towards it. But one of the things that caught my eye, because we've done it on the show a couple times, is this here, which is for contributors, let's make a dev containers configuration. It's a good first issue. It's definitely an enhancement to the application. As we drill into it, we can see there's not much else to that. I mean, it kind of, the goal of that is, for those who don't know, and Chris, feel free to jump in if you questions or comments as we go through this, but I think it's container.dev. No, containers.
Yeah, there is a specification, but at the same time, sometimes it's like you're right that there's a dev container specification website.
Yep. Containers.dev. I just forgot to pluralize it. So in here is there's an overview, there's the reference, there's the actual specification, and you're thinking, well, why do we have a spec around building a container? We have Docker files and things of that. Well, what this does is it gives you to not only include that Docker file, we can see that as we go through this, but it gives essentially any application that wants to look at whether it's a code that's sitting on disk or code that might be sitting in GitHub, and be able to say, I can take that code because you've got a dev container spec, and I understand that, and I can take that code and I can bring that code up to you in a browser or on your machine inside of a container and kind of encapsulate all of the work or the frameworks or anything you might need to make that run. So that's one of the reasons that this exists as a specification. So things like GitHub code spaces, Visual Studio Code, if you've got the dev containers extension in there, and other applications can look at this and say, well, I know how to put that in a container for you. And if you download a repository and you've got the extension in Visual Studio Code and you open it there, you'll see a notification in the lower right-hand corner that says, hey, do you want to open this in container? Because I see we've got a dev container folder. So having this spec makes that all flow very nicely. And then because there's a specification, there's an easy way for us to get this dev container up and running and help Jeff out with one of those items there.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think from the jump, this project has some reliance on, I want to say there's a couple pieces like Redis and some, and if you look through the project, what I noticed is there is a Docker Compose setup in there.
Yep.
I do not know how that will impact us in a dev container, but I feel like it could be that one of the ways to run this is using the Docker Compose file to get these multiple pieces going. On a recent show, he began looking at Aspire. I didn't get to watch the whole stream.
Yeah, that's on my backlog.
So I don't know what happened, but he began looking at saying, well, maybe we can use .NET Aspire, and that of course started a whole conversation about aspirifying, which he just said out loud, and even going and registering the domain name. So
aspirify.net,
something like that. Yeah,
you got to make sure you include the E, so it's aspire, the word IFY.
Oh, okay.
Aspirify, because there is an Aspirify without the E that already exists.
That was what I had said immediately. It's like, oh, Aspirify already exists, but not if you
You got to include the E.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go anywhere right now. It's an empty.
I didn't think so.
Yeah.
I didn't think it went anywhere, but it does look like it is popping up something. So yeah, look at that. So it's definitely been registered by somebody. This domain has recently been registered. Okay. So I'm not, the dev container stuff we've looked at on the show. I think it's really interesting. I'm going to be curious to see, if we can figure out how it works with, is it going to be where Docker Compose still works, or is it like, no, this is where you want to switch to Aspire so that it manages and I really don't know.
Yeah. And we haven't Yeah. So there is, and we're parsing through how this works to get it running locally too. So there's a little bit of a knowledge gap there. But one of the things we know we need is we know we need a Postgres database because TagzApp relies on that. We also know that there is probably going to, because it says you can use SQLite or tags or Postgres, and we can walk through some options there when we look at dev container pieces. I don't know how we're going to handle the caching part just yet, so I'll be honest. That's was kind of not something I noticed, but that's a good point to bring up. So we might have to see how that potentially could run or function inside of the inside of our container. But yeah, so so here we are in, and you mentioned there are some Docker Compose. I think those, if I understand the way this runs, there are some Docker Compose capabilities for bringing up that Postgres engine to run locally on your machine. So I know that's one of the reasons that these Docker that there are Docker files inside of here. Although this one does look like it actually creates everything in a container, so it could run in a container by itself. So that's good too. Okay, let's see. So if we go back so we have Jeff's application here. I've already gone ahead and forked TagzApp, so I have a local copy of it. This way we can make the changes we want to make to it when it comes to adding our dev container and doing that kind of work. And then if it's all successful, we can go back to Jeff and issue a pull request back to his environment. And because I don't have any permissions on his repository to even do a fork, or I'm sorry, even to do a branch inside of his repo. So this gives me a place to work and store my changes up in the cloud so that they can be persisted. And Jeff's already gone through and done the updating to .NET 8 RTM. So we've got a good, I think a good point for us to start and bring this into a container here. So I'm going to bring this down. So let me just do code. Ooh. Grab the URL. Go back into my trusty, let's see. Let's, users. No. Interesting. Okay. We'll put it in our dev talk show location, and we'll do a git clone. There you go. I think I've done. It looks like I've done this before. Perfect. So now I can do this tags. All right. So now I've got the application here inside of my local file system. I think the next thing we want to do is do I have any open? Let me close this. Cool. All right. Let's go ahead and take this directory and let's load it up into Visual Studio Code. Of course, that loads up off screen.
I'm trying to take some notes here because in their contributing doc, I don't feel like there's here's how to start from nothing.
Oh, okay.
And what I'm not 100% sure about is like, should I already just know this, or should we also say like, hold on, not everybody knows everything. Let's have you literally have nothing. All you've done is git clone. Well, make sure you have X, Y, Z, and maybe you get to the point where you're like, and now it works.
Right. Right. And even going to the, because there's the repo here, but there's also, so this is the overview of the application. There's actually a docs folder that has TagzApp documentation, but it's mainly around adding additional media providers, talking about some of the icons that are being used, and the testing, as well as the some of the things you need for the Docker parts. So that's all I kind of went through the, went looking through. In case you have your own keys.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. I missed that part.
I wasn't entirely convinced that it was ready for Docker Compose, only because when you look at the Docker Compose file, it was like, well, it says to launch TagzApp Web. How does it know? Like, am I wrong that it? Did he install Postgres on his machine? Is that where
Yeah.
it's kind of at, and we're marching towards where you wouldn't have to do that?
Yeah.
So
Do we want to see that part first? Because I can kind of show you as far as I've gotten on that part.
Okay. Yeah.
So if I open up TagzApp solution, and we're going to use Visual Studio 2022, and while that's running inside of, oh, that was dumb. That's not what I want to do. All right, we'll show the cool code trick. What I actually want to do is go into TagzApp, and then we'll do code dot dash R so that it uses the open window and doesn't give me a new code window. And it just basically points it to the new folder that I've told it to open up in there. Awesome. So inside of here, there's a scripts folder, and there's scripts for different things related to the database migration. I think he's using the Entity Framework on here. But there's also this, which is a command line for running the TagzApp. And I think if I go into Docker, is it Docker PS to see the running containers?
I think so. On both of those windows, if you could pop up the font size a little bit. I was turning to my laptop to see if I could watch it.
Okay.
When you get back to Visual Studio Code too.
Yep.
But for now, it's fine.
Okay. So let's do that again. So it's like that. So there is a Postgres folder here.
List containers. You're right. Okay.
That I already kicked off and had it running earlier this morning. So from here, that's interesting. Because it went to solution view. Okay. So that is up and running. If I go to Visual Studio.
So your first step was go into I'm trying to go into the scripts folder. And that's assuming that we get this running. But right now, the first thing we did was say, let's go into the scripts folder and run launch DB. And there seems to be both a bash and Windows version there.
Correct.
Okay. I'm wondering if this is sitting in the repo and I'm just missing it, because I really did go looking for,
for doc
getting started type docs. But
yeah, I mean, maybe looking for that launch db.command and see if anything pops back. But this is as far as, so I figured we need a database. I had that database running in the container. We've got a tags web app application here. And that's the one that we need to kind of run and start with. If I hit my debug window, it'll take a few seconds to build. There's our little .NET console popped up, so that's a good sign. If we look at that, kind of watch what's happening. There we go.
That's cool. If it's really,
it's the homepage of TagzApp. Now I know if you don't have, because that's why I went looking for the for the launch commands, as it were. If you don't have that Postgres opening, you won't get this far. It talks about the connection string and not being able to make the connection that it needs to. So, but this, if I understand, I can put a new tag in, so we could do one for the Dev Talk Show and have that sit there. So that could be something that we could be watching for. Now, that works. Privacy doesn't matter. But if I go to the waterfall, that's when it will break, because I don't think we have anything set up for any of the service providers, right? We don't have any of the key information for Mastodon or Twitch or any of those kind of things.
Okay.
So unless there's a test way of doing it, and where it just shows us the image, I haven't come across that yet. So waterfall,
right?
Boom. Yeah, and then we get to this point in our chat client, and then that's where it kind of says We're not, it's not completely processed yet.
I wonder if these are app settings that we
don't have.
could load up with something just to
Yeah.
like maybe connect it to our Twitch chat.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So there is app settings. There's app settings development.
so there's providers, and what I'm going to do is see if the bin provider. So there's a provider for Twitch chat.
Okay.
And start Twitch chat is looking at a class called Twitch configuration. So I'm finding this up in the TagzApp providers section.
Okay.
See what I come up with. Find, go to the definition, and it looks like I'm just trying to see get configuration by key, but is it in a section? I'm guessing it's in a section, but I can't quite tell. It might be just a section called Twitch chat, and then you need to go. Like I might have to go into Twitch, or one of us would, and get all.
Well, we already have that, right, from what you did before.
Yeah, we could use a lot of this information, I think, if I knew where it was. So interesting. Client ID, client secret.
Provider configuration.cs. That should be where it all starts, right?
Yeah. Provider configuration.cs. So I see there's an iProvider configuration, and
so for each different config that we need to put in place. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Unless, like you said, as a developer, if you don't have that stuff set up, was there any kind of a sample stream? That would be an interesting concept. Is you're not necessarily testing connectivity to a provider. Maybe you're working on UI or something, and so you're saying, I don't really want to have to go out to the provider, punch in a message, check the app, like. And that's what I'm not sure if that's already in the system. It might be.
So if that was there, I mean, are we thinking of starting at like Program CS and working out from there?
I don't know that it is there, because I was looking at the different providers. The YouTube chat, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch chat, Mastodon, Blazot, Azure Q. Well, I mean, that's one, right? Just start writing to a queue.
Right, but we're not set up to do that.
Sure. But I am happy that that the website went up very quickly. That was cool.
That's a good start, right?
Yeah, it is a really good start. And I want to see.
I think Chris is on mute for a second here.
Yeah, I was. I also wanted to see. So I brought it up in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to switch it back to Visual Studio. I guess what I'm just wondering, so the fact that Postgres is running is great. I'm just wondering if there's a way we can get that UI to show something.
Right. I'm with you. Because then we know that we can go down the path of then getting the container working. Because we know we've gotten that kind of up and running. So if we go back to our Twitch chat configuration, right? We know we need a channel name, channel bot, client ID, secret, and an OAuth. Well, an OAuth token we would get probably through part of that process. It's not something we would have saved in the setting. So it's just we need to know.
There are also tests too. I'm going to run the tests because I do have the container running.
Oh, cool.
So I wonder what happens if you run the tests, if they all work.
That's the app itself in the container.
Well, no, I have the Postgres container running, and then I just ran the app in Visual Studio.
Gotcha.
And so what I'm curious about is if I go to Test Explorer, what happens? I'll switch over if I need to, but I mean, they're unit tests, so they may not really, at least one of the projects is unit tests. One of the projects is using Playwright. I'm not sure how integrated the tests are, but I'm just curious if they run. I mean, it certainly might be a start too, if because so here's the interesting thing is there is this document in Visual Studio Code that I'm going to share it.
Okay.
So that we can look at it. Because there's a dev container section in the Visual Studio Code documentation.
Oh.
And there's a section in there called advanced containers. So I don't know if you see that link that I gave you, unless you want me to just switch over. Either way.
Let me say code, Visual Studio Code remote. Oh, gotcha. Copy link.
I was thinking, is this what we are looking at? So in the dev container section, there's an advanced container section, and then there's this article, connect to multiple containers.
Yeah.
If you prefer to use dev container JSON and are using Docker Compose, you can create separate dev container JSON files for each service in your source tree, each pointing to a common Docker Compose file. So I thought, is this what we're looking for? Because I'm not sure.
And the thought there is that you would have a container for the web app and the code that runs there, and another container for the Postgres.
Yeah.
Okay. You can do that. And the path that I was initially going to go down was that there is a C# and Postgres container all in one.
I feel like maybe instead of kind of beating our heads against the wall to get the whole thing working, I agree. We haven't even started on the dev container file.
Yeah.
And we could get that going with .NET 8. You've said the web app will run and tell you, sorry, I didn't see a Postgres database. So then like there's step 1 and then step 2 as well. Let's see if we can get the Postgres database come up, and then the app will at least run.
Yeah, in the container.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
And that's probably a reasonable half-hour type target.
Instead of waiting for the last 10 minutes to suggest that, that's a good idea. Because we do our best work in the last 10 minutes. So there's that. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. This is the TagzApp application. And I'm going to shut down the Visual Studio one just so there's no potential conflicts, issues, or whatever with the code that we've got over there. Let's just close that up. Cool. All right. So here we are inside of Visual Studio Code. And one of the things that we have in here is our dev containers. And that is a GitHub, or I'm sorry, that is a Visual Studio Code extension that lets us, that understands the dev container specification and lets us bring our code inside of a container so that we can work on it. And one thing that we didn't mention that this does really nicely is that it makes it very easy for someone who's new to the project, or in this case, maybe somebody who is helping out from a source code or from an open source perspective, come in, do a little bit of work, and be able to not have to completely figure out how to configure their machine. This would just up and run. All right. So that's the container we're using. So because of that, up in the command palette here, I get a number of options for dev containers. So all kinds of things that we can do when it comes to, once we get the specification in place, attaching to those containers, changing the configuration files, rebuilding and reopening, all of those cool things. So we don't have any, you would think, you would want to go to this one here that says new dev container. And what that's going to do is that's actually going to give you a brand new project in a new folder and have you start working down a new dev container path. It's not what we want to do.
Oh, okay.
What we want to do, because I was running through this and said, that's what I want. I need a new dev container. What I really want to do is add dev container configuration files to my existing project. So that's what we want to do here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And I've got some options. I could use predefined configuration definition. I could use Docker Compose, because we have a couple of those in here. See that's finding those in our source code that's saying, hey, do you want to use those? What we're actually going to do is use a predefined container configuration. So I'm going to take that. And then now I've got all of the options available to me to be able to pick which kind of container that I want to use. In this case, I want to use C#.NET with Postgres. I know we're going to need a Postgres container or a database. Let's try and see if we can make it all work in one container and not have to have that additional wiring that you
That's cool
pointed out.
That's cool that's like already there. I didn't even know. That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And then what's not here, but I think would be easy to do, is to have a SQLite capability inside of our container, because I think Jeff mentions that in the documentation as well. So let's go ahead and pick this as the dev container definition. And what's awesome is, because it wasn't there the week of .NET Conf, is that they've included now the ability to have the .8 or .NET 8 version of a container. And we'll show what this points to in the back end in a minute. But basically, this gives us, because we're using .NET 8, we get the .NET SDK inside of here. And then if we want any additional features, we can look for those as well. So maybe we want to go ahead and include something like the SQLite install. So we have the ability to have SQLite, and then also the VS Code extension along with that to be able to talk to our SQLite database. So we'll have that capability in here as well.
Wow. I haven't used this to construct dev container files, and I've been missing out because I literally sit there trying to hammer out what should be in that file. And now I feel kind of foolish. Because look at this as a great starting point.
Yeah, the wizard's really helpful here, especially with, hey, I want the, I know it's in here. Or maybe it's in the next, there it is, the Azure Developer CLI, the Azure CLI. I've got the, I can bring all of those in. Now they take a long time to bring into here, so I'm not going to do that right now. But I could also bring in Git if I wanted to bring that in there too. So got all kinds of great capabilities here. So I'm just going to keep it to SQLite, and we're going to say okay. Now, so two things happened. One, it gave me the file. And then the other thing is, you can see what happened down here is, because that configuration file exists, Visual Studio Code with the dev container extension knows that we can reopen this all in a container and make it work. But before we do that, let's just take a look here and see what we got. So if I go back to our folder, I've got a dev container folder where it put all of our pieces. I have my dev container.json, which is the main driver of the dev container specification. So I've got, a name here for the specific file that or specific not specification, I guess configuration that we've got in this place. It's using a Docker Compose file. Now, there's a couple different ways that it could happen. I could basically point, if I'm using one image like we are here, I could just say, well, just give me that image. But because it created a Compose file, we can take a look at that in a second as well. We've got a workspace that's going to get created for Visual Studio Code to use. And then we've got the features that we included. So that checkbox that we did for the SQLite, that's our feature inside of here. All of this, not all of it, but that is definitely repeating. We don't have any customization or report forwarding yet. So all of this is fine right now. So we don't have to worry about any of those comments that are in there. If we look at our Docker Compose, you can see that we've got, essentially the steps that we need to do to essentially, looks like it's combining potentially our Postgres image and then our Docker file, which is pulling from the base image of our Microsoft container registry with dev container, and then this latest version for the 8.0 bookworm. And just see. All right, so we're creating a It's a volume. It's an image. Oh, okay. So my guess, and help me, my Docker Compose is a little rusty. So what it looks like it's doing is taking our Docker file, which we have here, which says use the base image of .NET 8.0 Bookworm, and let's go ahead and define these additional components like the network, a database, and for that database, we need that image to be included inside of our environment here.
Yeah, I think that's all right. What's interesting is we're setting up user and password there. I wonder if we will have to match that up at some point with what is
I was
assumed in the app. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say we should probably look at doing that now. So we've got this here, and it's got a name, a user, and a password of
I guess there's even a port
tags.
there, 5432, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if that's standard or not. But we
Yeah,
can
I
take
don't
a look
know.
on the compose. Oh, 5432. There we go. Um, I don't. Since it's all sitting in the same container, I'm not sure if we're going to need that, but I could be wrong.
Right, I hear you. Yeah.
So what we're going to do here is, I would say, let's just go ahead and make it match. Question is the database. I mean, name doesn't necessarily map to the database.
Well, so there is a PG tags, and again, I don't know if that maps, but in this, I don't know. This is like the container name. I don't know that it matches at all. It's hard to say, for me,
Okay.
anyways.
Well, we should. So, source. Look at the web data.
I mean, I did a search through the code base for it, so that may just be that's that's just like so that if somebody were to do a Docker PS, it's like, okay, well, here's my Postgres container. Super obvious.
Okay.
That's my guess there. In fact, I'm looking at it now, and it looks like it's more related to the container and less related to something the project cares about.
Related to the container. Okay. I just, I have a feeling it's probably the same thing. Right?
Like what's the database connection string, maybe? Yeah.
Like database name.
Yeah, his default database is named Postgres, at least. So in app settings JSON, it's looking on 5432, and
Okay.
it's looking for a user ID of tags, a password ID of tags, just like you have, and a database of Postgres.
Okay. That's this guy.
So,
okay.
So I figured we're matching there now.
Yep. Totally agree. So this would be perfect. Okay. So if we go here and we save this, and I think that is everything we need to update. We could go ahead and let's make it run. And to do that, we still have our notification bell down here that we bring that up. Short of that, we go back to the command palette and say dev containers, and let's go ahead and do it's probably up top, wasn't it? Yep, reopen in a container. That's what we're looking for.
It was there earlier. I saw it, and so I said, I know we just have to find it. It's there. It's just they moved it out of. You're looking for alphabetical order, and they tricked you.
Well, this is all alphabetical order except for the things I used recently. So since I've run through this, we get to go ahead and do this. Awesome. So now we can see down here in the lower left that we're opening a remote connection to that dev container. I get this little pop-up window here that lets me see. Ooh.
Wow. But no. So you were right. You got a pop-up window. It started firing up. and then something bad happened.
Looking interactive shell.
I wonder if the clue is further up from all the red stuff. I don't know. Okay, so complaining about no such file or directory of some kind. Oh.
Error mounting.
And everything was just like so far. All you really had to do was set up that dev container file, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it hasn't even got to the point of doing any of the stuff. See.
The only other thing I was wondering was, is it going to have a problem with a running container? I don't know that, though. I don't know.
That's kind of what I was thinking as well. And maybe we stop all of these. Because certainly none of them right now are needed. I'll save on the memory stuff too. And these are just containers. So if we wanted to, they're not the images. So if I wanted to be safe and just do this. Clean up a little bit. All right. Let's try it again. Retry. Up our log. All right, that's better.
I feel like it didn't take this long to error out last time. And the only thing I can think of is that there was like a collision in container names because the container name is specified specifically. Well, and maybe I'm not quite right about that. Like I wish I was more of a Docker expert, and maybe that's a 2024 New Year's resolution. It's the kind of thing like you use it and you can get by, but
Yeah.
that's not the same as really like knowing.
Kind of like Git.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know.
I mean, that's for me. For me, it's
struggles
Git, right? I can do enough to be dangerous and get myself going, but you know, when I hit
Here's the
problems
thing,
like all
though.
you,
It's really cruising.
yeah.
Now, I think it's cruising. Now, it didn't actually get it started, right? Oh, there were problems. Bum, bum. I wonder
Well,
what.
that's okay. Do I want to? Oh, okay. So this is interesting, right? Because I have C# dev kit running on my machine, and when I run VS Code on my machine, I have that extension available. What we have to remember is that we're inside of a container now. So all of those extensions you have on the desktop deployed version don't necessarily exist inside of here, but it's easy for us to do those kind of things. So it's a shortcut for us to go ahead and bring the C# dev kit in there. If we look inside of here, we can see local installed, and there you go. I knew it wasn't none, but there was a couple. So these were some of the ones that kind of came into the container for us. And some
So to
of
be clear,
these,
this window of Visual Studio Code
yeah,
is connected to the container, which is a little mind-bending. Like this one's on my local machine. This one, I mean, it is on your local machine.
yeah.
But that all happened very quickly. Like it was a seamless transition. And I guess the only way you can tell for sure is that lower left-hand corner. Is that right?
That you're in the container? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so what we're doing now is you're saying, I really need the C# extension in here.
Yes.
And is it going to add it to the dev container JSON for you?
You have that option. So I think if I do, let's just do C# devkit. Okay. So in this case, it's saying, hey, do you want me to install this in your dev container? And I think there used to, and
yeah, no, there's an add to dev container JSON option right there.
there you go. That's what I was looking for. So I could just basically say install, but then I can also say add, do that bit as well. So it's a two-step process. So just doing this. We'll wait till it finishes installing. I guess why? Well, wait till it finishes just in case there's any kind of.
I'll admit, I'm actually surprised by how smooth this is going. Maybe I shouldn't be, but
well, we have done this a couple times. I know I have.
Dev containers
even outside
we've
the
done.
Show. Yep.
Dev containers we've done, but there's always a difference for me from, okay, a lot of times when we've done dev containers, it's sort of like, let's show everybody how to get started, simple project. And it's like, okay, well, what I love about this example is here's something real someone's working on. And it's not even that big. It's web app, Postgres database, maybe some work. And then later we're going to have to think about like, how do you set up these providers? But I'm not too worried about that right now. Even that little pivot, suddenly it's like, oh, this just became real world. What are the real world problems I'm going to run into? And so far, they've either been solved by the dev containers extension or the help that we already get in these other extensions. So yeah, I'm finding it pretty smooth.
Right. So just to be fair, all we did here was we installed. Where's my mouse? Oh, there it is. Okay. We did an installation. So it says it's installed. Now, if I go back to here and our dev container and our dev container.json, I'll close this window down a little bit because we don't need it right now. There are no other features, extensions. There's nothing listed here that were added. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this and say, okay, let's add this to my dev container. Because the reason is a container is, I think ephemeral is the word, right? It can come and go as it needs to. There's an image that will go ahead and recreate that. But when it recreates it, everything that we added to that container after that image was created from that image goes away. So I would have to go back and re-add DevKit to the project. And we don't need to do that if we do this. So we've got under customizations, VS Code, extensions, and we could put any number of extensions inside of here. If you wanted to make sure Copilot gets installed, right? There's a it's probably not going to give me the IntelliSense, is it? Maybe. So yeah, so we could do that one where we say, hey, let's include the pull request GitHub extension inside of here.
Yeah, right.
Not going to do that. We're going to keep it simple. We'll just use CS DevKit and keep it there. We'll save that, and now we're good to go. We don't have to rebuild the container, right? So anytime you make a change to the dev container, your Docker file, your Docker Compose, it's going to say, hey, do you want to rebuild the container? We don't need to because we've already added that extension. So for now, we're fine. We're going to ignore that. But what I want to do is, now that we've got this, we created our Postgres database. Let's see if we can do, let's get a new terminal up here. And we're at TagzApp. We want to go to source. And we want to go to this is Linux, so I need to remember my caps. We want to go into the web, and we want to do a .NET build. Well, yeah, just if we do build, it'll restore what we need, right?
Yeah, it'll run a restore.
Okay.
Famous last word. The other thing that I found interesting I was kind of seeing your terminal window warning, and I'm wondering which .NET SDKs got installed. So this is, see how it's complaining there, blah, blah, blah. What are you complaining about there? Access to the path denied. Oh, man.
TagzApp source TagzApp dot security. Maybe I'm too far down.
I don't know. I'm going to look and see. Is there a... What do I see? I mean, there's a solution file. Is this the kind of thing that you have to open the solution even in Visual Studio Code? Which the dev kit does for us, right? It'll handle looking at a solution.
Let's take a look.
As far as I know, Visual Studio IDE doesn't support this in .NET. I believe there's a blog post about C++ dev container support.
Okay.
I think I really personally hope to see some kind of unification here where I'm a VS Code developer. The dev container at least gets me going. I'm a Visual Studio developer. The dev container gets me going. I don't think you have to, it wouldn't mean that I'd have to spend my life using the dev container, but I just really like it as a valuable way to say, I don't even know if my machine is set up correctly. Oh no, it's correct. So who knows what I was thinking there?
Yeah, and the reason for that goes back to that Docker file and having it use that base image of the 8.0. I'm blanking on what it's not Blowfish. It was
that Bookworm.
Bookworm. Yeah.
Yeah. The only reason I said that, and again, I didn't know what it was. It might have been related to installing C# dev kit, actually.
Okay.
But I saw in your interactive console when all this stuff was churning, it was like downloading .NET 7 SDK. And I thought, what? That seems weird. But again, I'm not sure what was what at that point because so much was going on.
Yeah.
So the trick now is we're trying to get this thing to run.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's saying it doesn't have access to some paths. Like, is there some weird pathing that was expected?
But they're just sub projects from the looks of it.
I know. So
So maybe I'm.
Does everything else have to be built first? I'm not sure. Because we're really close here.
Yeah. Okay, the working directory is not containing solution file, so we got to back down into source. And from here, we got our solution, and then all the rest of the folders to the other projects.
There's a solution file here. If you run .NET build from here, I wonder how we do. Cross our fingers. Okay, the last access write time on file. What the heck is that all about? Now I'm beginning to think permissions in the container.
Well, it's less. I don't know if this workspace processing information in the background is holding us up because last time we ran it, there were like 68 errors. So if we go back to because we ran it in the source, we ended up with that. So we're getting close. I just think something's happening in the background, which is unfortunate when you're on a time show.
What do we have a hint as to what is failing here exactly? We've got, let's see, user share .NET, the SDK. So
which is the SDK we're using.
Right. It's like saying, oh no, it's trying to write a copy complete file. access to the path. And I'm wondering, I kind of started looking, is there something about dev containers and it's unable to write out to your, let's see, dev container.
So I was trying to write to the object folder.
Yeah.
I mean, this one's the unit test. This one's also related to the unit test.
Oh, interesting.
Is there a build switch where we don't do the testing?
Yeah, that's how we solve it, right? Just don't build the test.
Just trying to get.
Now, are those the only builds that failed, and maybe the rest? Like now, if you went back to TagzApp.web and tried to run it, and yes, we'll want to figure this out for sure. But there's a good point here that there could be a little bit of extra configuration. I'm glad that you noticed that it was the test. So DevOps of us to just say like disable the test. Isn't that everybody watching? If you have a little experience with this, isn't that what ends up happening at work? I hate to say it. Just say.
Well, I will say, getting it to run is the first unit test.
I can't help but laugh a little bit.
Sure. Build failed. Cannot be access to the path is denied.
Okay, so there's something going on here where I feel like, I mean, I'm gonna. It's so weird. Like even if you like sudo.net run, and I'm not sure
I
you would
down
even
that path in my head as well.
Did you? I know, isn't that weird? Like, what is the permission that's going on here? But then, like, what would you log in as? Oh well, it's almost like, and this sounds like a problem that could be solved in the Docker files, right?
Yeah.
So that the user that you're running at least when you're in the dev container, has the permission to use .NET Run.
It is taking a lot longer this time.
Wouldn't that be great if that was it? And then we'll say like, okay, so how to do this correctly. But no, and I could see that is some of the hard work here is saying, okay, so it was easy to set up, but in order to, because of the configuration, because this isn't just like, oh, I did a Hello World project, we need to make sure the user that you're running as is Visual Studio Code in Visual Studio Code has the permission it needs to build and run.
A lot of warnings. That's okay. I can deal with those.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of cleanup on the null work in there.
Unhandled Postgres exception. Role tags does not exist.
Interesting. Closer though. So it ran.
Yeah.
And then it blew up saying it even tried to connect to the Postgres database. But for whatever reason, that particular Postgres container, which I guess we could go look at that. See, here's the thing. We're running Postgres. If I understand correctly, we're running a Postgres container that came to us via the like the wizard of sorts.
Yeah.
What about the one that's actually in this code?
In this container?
Basically, there's got to be a Docker file in here, which I guess I'm going to go look for.
All right.
Or am I wrong about that? So here's a Docker file in TagzApp Web that restores the ASP.NET and then the .NET Nightly SDK. Wow. Is that true? No, actually, he's pulling a specific one. He's just pulling it from that section. Okay. So what I'm wondering is when the Docker, when he runs Docker, no, he's just, let's go see launch.command again. I'm sorry, launch DB. What does launch DB do again? Launch DB says,
name tags, Postgres user. Oh, those are environment
okay
setting. Oh,
how about this? What about these migrations? Postgres security migration in the scripts folder, add migration. I'm wondering, does the role not exist because the migration didn't happen?
Oh.
Which we could run, right? Except that we might need the .NET EF tool.
Which we would have to, which we could install.
You could install, yeah. I don't have it memorized how, but I think it's like .NET install EF. Might even be that simple. .NET tool install. Okay. I can drop a link in if we want to go, or drop the command line that I think I'm seeing if you're still looking for it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have.
Okay. So, because this always gets me. This always gets me is that it's not just like .NET install. It's
there you go.
That gets you the package, but I think what you want is you want the .NET global tool, because then you could run that command file.
Gotcha.
At least I'm pretty sure. The thing that I'm still a little unclear about is the whole, worked on our local machine problem. We didn't do any of this.
Yep. All right. So .NET tool install --global .NET EF is what it looks like. Okay. Right. We don't need the package because we're sure Jeff already has that in there. So we're at 9 o'clock. I guess we'll let our affiliates know that we're going to run a little long on this. For those of you who are old enough to understand, thank you for watching.
Wow, I know.
In the U.S., while that's running, in the U.S. here, there's network affiliates. So there's like the main ABC, NBC, CBS, and then you have the local affiliates, which we have here in Philly. And, the network would be running long on a program, and they would say, well, the local people, you got to just hang in there with us because your program will be delayed while we finish this up. So that was what our funny little comment that we made there. All right. So it looks like we're good.
And that still means nothing to entire generations that are like, what? I watch Netflix. I watch YouTube.
I watch YouTube. About? I don't. It's just Hulu. Okay.
So again, not sure if that's going to do anything, but.
Okay. But then we're thinking we should add the migration bit.
Maybe. I don't know. So he's got a couple commands because what I'm trying to figure out is how do we get it. The only difference between what we did here and what we did locally is here. Locally, when we ran it, it seems to have said, well, you have Postgres running, so I can connect to it, so you're good, you get the homepage. Here it said, well, you have Postgres running,
but a role.
You don't have a role that I'm looking for.
Yeah, and that's why I thought by changing the changing the Docker Compose that we would have gotten through that, because that kind of defined. I thought it defined the role I thought so looking too. For.
Well, it defined a username and an ID, but it didn't define a role, which makes me wonder, Is there a missing piece of setup? Because I think you're right. Further down in the container, there was a username and password.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the boom. Docker Compose, boom, down here.
But not being as
part.
familiar as I should be with Postgres as a Postgres expert watching right now, saying like it's the same thing. You're fine. Like that's not the issue. But I don't know.
Interesting.
How it's like, oh, you have to create the role.
Yeah.
Do we have an init SQL file sitting around, or is that maybe one of those things where, as a developer, we make this mistake all the time? You're trying to set up for that sharing this code with other folks, and oops, here's a step that I missed.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna look around for create.role in the code base.
Okay.
Or create role, that is.
Yeah.
I've got create table of not exists in db configure TagzApp.cs.
Okay. db configure TagzApp. Is that in the source?
Well, I'm just looking through the source. I'm not saying this is it. I'm just trying to see, and I don't see anywhere in the source where there's a create role.
So if we did that,
can you run from the command line something called psql?
PSQL?
Yeah, PSQL. Okay.
Bash, not command.
Because what I was going to say is there. I'm wondering if you can run from the command line. You can run Postgres commands, and maybe we create the role, and then that's it, right?
Yeah. And that's what I was hoping we might get. Let's try this real quick. Not locally. Container. We want to reopen. Oh, rebuild container. Install Docker open.
I also wonder if you could quickly install pSQL. Just would Linux come through for us and install that command line tool? App dash get. Sometimes you don't even have to do the
sudo.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean apt-get install pSQL. My brain is fighting me this morning. Oh, okay, bummer. Because I was going to say that would be cool. Let me see, how can I install pSQL? Okay, so how about this? Same thing, except the package we're looking for is PostgreSQL -client. You got to, yeah. Yep, that looks good.
Like that?
Yep. Now, granted, we would want to update the container later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Seems like a good
Yeah.
tool to have in here.
And that might be something if when you're going through building it, that might be something else to look for in that list of things that you can add to the container. Okay, so now if I go pSQL.
Okay, so now we have to tell it. So pSQL -- version confirms it's installed. Then in order to connect to your server, you do a pSQL -h host name, which maybe we don't need. I don't know. That may be optional. But then there's a -beef port, which I think we do know. And then you can give it a $U username, which we know. And then you can give it a -d lowercase. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of you. With a database name.
Which is tags.
Okay. And then there's a -w that I don't know what that is. Oh, I see. -w means it will prompt you for the password.
Oh, could I do a -p?
It's a capital W. Well, that looks really different. Like the option that includes the password looks very different. So it might be easier to do this. You may just pull it off screen or something. If it really does work and it prompts you, then well, actually we don't have to pull it off screen. This isn't a secret password, right? Yeah. Oh, bummer. Because that's what I was hoping. I was like, this is it. Is it 5432 for the database? It was, wasn't it?
Yeah. Do we
so there's a ports thing in Visual Studio Code. Is this being forwarded? Or is it not even running? Like, but that seems weird though. If you do a Docker PS, you'll see it, won't you? Or am I right about that? No.
I should see all be running one.
Yeah, because it's all should be running locally. And we don't, the interesting thing here is what port in the container.
Although it says it's running two. It's running a DB and it's running an
I see. Okay. Yeah, exactly. And I just wonder. I think that said 5432, didn't it?
Did I miss that?
In the logs.
Ah, here you go. Yep.
And what did you have? Was it 5432?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh man, this is so close. I feel like it's right there, but it may have to wait for another show, right?
Yeah. So it says that the database system was shut down.
Oh.
And it's ready to accept connections.
And then role tags does not exist. That was probably you.
So what if I did? Okay, so what if we did this? We'll try this, and it'll be the last thing we'll try, and then we'll move on. So if we do this,
okay,
we've already got. Maybe that's not right. I was just trying to think of some way to talk to the database to get that part going.
Right. And we think it's running. So if we could just connect to it in here, then we're in good shape. And yeah, you put in 5432 and it didn't work. It's forwarding 34521, but gosh, that's so weird. Is that? I know we're dealing with some port forwarding going on, but see, it's forwarding. Yeah, it's not doing what I think it's doing. Do you? Oh man, I don't know. That's the app, right? And the app's going to complain that it can't reach. Well, it's not running.
Yeah. So it's not even going to complain. That's just going to come up empty. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's some way to make that run.
That's running the container.
Yeah.
And
But if we go back to here, this is the. I apologize for it being so small. I'm not really sure if it can. Oh, it does. How about that? Okay. Right. So we've got start Postgres, blah blah blah. Listening on here, Unix. I mean, that is probably.
and look at that address exactly matches what it was trying to connect to.
Yeah.
So I feel like either the error that we're getting is the server listening, which makes me wonder, like, is it really that it's not listening? Which it might be. I mean, the database system was shut down is a little concerning to me.
Yeah.
Is it really listening, or did we not get that database running with the user that we thought we did? And so,
Yeah.
it's kind of just saying like, I don't know who Tags is. All right.
Yeah. So we've got a little work to figure if that database is up and running or not. And if not, how to get it up and running successfully, because it is in its own container, which when we did the dev container definition, that is what it said it was going to do, right? If we go back to open that up, this guy. So it's, that's the image it said it was going to go ahead and create.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the yeah.
Add forward ports. Did you do that? Add forward ports 53432 to dev container to forward PostgreSQL locally. Did we do that part? What it's saying in the comments?
No. But that's what we tried to do here.
Okay.
Is that I don't think that's complete, right? Because
Well, what's the dev container JSON have?
it doesn't have anything.
Right. And then you tried doing it yourself.
Yeah. I mean, we could do this.
Well, you're in the right spot for it. They're just saying you got to make one of those.
Ports that are forwarded from the container to the local machine can be an integer port number or the string. I mean, 5432 is the one we need. Oh, why it's giving me.
Yeah, 5000 and 5001 are the typical defaults for .NET. 5432 for Postgres. So now, is there a port attribute that has to go in for 5432? I don't remember what the other thing said. Yeah, maybe, right?
Mm-hmm. Still doesn't like this.
Yeah, forward ports itself is the problem. Why?
Oh, it says expect. Oh, duh.
Oh, a comma. Huh. Yay, JSON.
All right, let's do this. Rebuild it. That way, all those things will get in there. One other thing we'll do. We've got that. Okay. Hmm.
It's almost like that restart was quicker than it needed to be, I guess, because the other containers weren't removed yet.
Yeah. To get the same. That's interesting. Yeah, I'm wondering if there are some things we have to do on the database to get it up and ready. I mean, but it's not. Well, let's do while that's building. Yeah, I think what I'm looking for is there's the. Well, I guess it's here. And it doesn't have a Docker Compose. It's just basically running it.
Yeah, all it does is just launch a Postgres container and say, here's a user and password, right?
Mm-hmm. So now we got 5 ports.
Now, the process information unavailable, it's still green, though.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder if that PS command would work. I don't know that it will.
Probably not because we got to reinstall Postgres.
Oh, yeah. All right.
All right, give this a second. What was that error about? Projects are still running down here.
I suppose this could be our last attempt, and then we might even go raid Jeff's channel.
See, well, they're doing the story
Yeah.
today.
Now he went live.
Okay.
So
This is quite slow. Hmm. Yeah, we might have to. Seems to have bogged down.
Yeah, it seems like so. There's a couple things that we were able to do. Like we were able to get this running. We can build the code. We
Yeah.
think we have. We think we have both Postgres and .NET running in here.
Mm-hmm.
But what's just unclear is what's the configuration in the Postgres database. At least we think what's the configuration in the Postgres database that's preventing TagzApp from starting.
Yeah.
Because that might be a first pass at a dev container JSON that works. So definitely, and this is a nice real world problem. Instead of like, hey, I got dev container working.
Mm-hmm.
This is, hey, now I want to work on something. So,
right.
And I might not have the database installed. Why, do I have to have all that? The other thing we didn't do is we didn't run it as sudo, but I remember that took a while. So we can take a look at that either offline or another time. But actually, we just got some comments here that said netstat will tell what's listening and tell us if Postgres is listening. So that's true.
And we'd run that here, right?
Yeah.
That's that.
Yeah. Dash NL. And five, 4, 3, 2. Yeah. And, I appreciate the comment here we have from John. I find I learn more in debugging and understanding why. And certainly that's the point is, and I think I've said it a couple times in the last hour, is that I've watched or even given many a tutorial that is the basic how to get started. And then where I try to move to the next step is, okay, so what's the thing right after the tutorial that I got stuck on for 3 days?
Right.
And can I figure out what it is, explain it to somebody else so that they don't waste 3 days?
Yeah.
And it's 3 days is an arbiter. I don't know what it is. So we're pretty close. And I think, and I love this issue from Jeff. And I can't wait to get over to his stream and say like, hey, we're trying to do this and we just got stuck on a couple things. Maybe we'll get some feedback from him. Because I do think if we can get this going with the dev container stuff, then anybody could pull it down and just get to work, which is pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. I think, and that's what we're trying to get to. So
yeah,
cool.
So, hey, everybody watching, we had some people hang in with us today, and I think that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for staying with us. I know we had some empty dead space, and that's fine. And hopefully everybody learned kind of what we went through. We really did get started pretty quickly with that dev container extension. That was super helpful. I'd never seen it before. And any comments or suggestions, leave them down in YouTube where all the replays are, youtube.com/the Dev Talk Show. And most importantly, Rich, have a Merry Christmas. And everybody watching, have a great holiday, no matter what you're celebrating this season. And I think next week, see you next week.
Yeah. Probably late in the week. I think we might have some shows. So,
all right. So I think we will see you all next week on the Dev Talk Show. Let's see if I can start this raid here. It's still live because I'm not sure how you raid out of StreamYard.
No worries. I figured that's what was going on.
And so I said raid now. And then I'm going to end our stream.